Welcome back to the Jericho experiment for our discussion on the Lost Book of Enki, Memoirs and Prophecies of an Extraterrestrial God. This is Jericho Walls here with my buddy Chet O'Dell. Thanks for joining us as we dissect the writings of Zecharia Sitchin and explore even deeper in the series to reveal the mysteries from ancient texts written long before the first civilizations of man. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Click the bell so you're notified when we upload new videos.
Hey Jericho. So in our last episode, we talked about our thoughts on the Lost Book of Enki and how this book resonates with us. It is a very thought-provoking book, and we hope you all enjoy listening to our opinions on it.
So today, we're going to start our experiment on the 14 tablets. We're going to learn that these 14 tablets were the words of Enki, but did he write them?
No. So before we read the first tablet, we learn how the information in these tablets were given to a scribe named Endubsar. And he was chosen to record the words of Enki, and why it is important that these words were recorded.
So these are the words of Endubsar, and he's telling us why he was chosen to record the words of Enki. In the 7th year after the Great Calamity, on the 17th day of the 2nd month. And he states that he was one of the few people of Eridu City that had escaped to the arid steppe, just as an evil wind was coming. When you hear something called an evil wind, what does that make you think of?
Well, it sounds pretty scary. I mean, we aren't really sure yet, but it sounds to me like there was some kind of great explosion, maybe from something like a nuclear bomb. He specifically wrote wind, not water, so we know he isn't talking about the Great Deluge.
So Endubsar states that he was in the woods looking for firewood when something strange happened.
Yeah. He says that a strange whirlwind came out of the south. It had a reddish brilliance about it, and it made no sound. And as it reached the ground, 4 feet spread out of it, and then the brilliance just disappeared. Well, Endubsar realized this was a divine vision, so he just threw himself to the ground.
I'm sure I would have done the same thing. I mean, what the hell?
Right, what the hell? I probably would have pissed my pants.
No doubt. And then he says that he opened his eyes and he saw 2 divine beings standing in front of him with the faces of men, wearing clothes that shine like brass. And they told him that he had been summoned by the great god, the Lord Enki, and not to be afraid.
Easier said than done, right?
Yes.
And they took him to the land of Magan, on the island amidst the river of Magan, where the sluices are. And we know from the cuneiform text of Mesopotamia that the land of Magan is referred to as Oman, a region where the precious copper was found in abundance. And he tells us about this experience and how, when he was released, he collapsed and felt voided of the spirit of life. And when his senses returned, he heard someone calling his name.
But he couldn't see who it was. It was dark, but there was some kind of aura. So he spoke and said, "Here I am."
And it was Enki that was speaking to him, telling Endubsar that Enki had chosen him to be his scribe, to write down his word.
But Endubsar tells us that he didn't see any clay tablets or containers of wet clay, only a scribe's table, scribe's tools, and one stylus that glistened as no reed stylus ever did.
And Enki tells him that he is to write down his own words because he is distraught by what has befallen mankind in the Great Calamity. Enki wants him to record the true course of events so that gods and men will know that his hands are clean, and that the Great Deluge was destined to happen, but not the Great Calamity. That the Great Calamity could have been prevented, and that Enki himself did everything he could to prevent it, but unfortunately failed.
And he states that at the end of days, there will be a day of judgment for this, and that the earth shall quake and the river will change course. There will be a darkness at noon and a fire in the heavens at night. There will be a day when the celestial God returns, and the ones who shall survive, the ones who shall perish, the ones who will be rewarded, and the ones that will be punished will be determined.
So, Enki is telling Endubsar that he wants him to record the true accounts of the beginnings and the prior times and of the olden times. For in the past, the future lies.
And he tells him that he's going to write these words for 40 days and for 40 nights, because 40 is Enki's sacred number among the gods.
And that he will not eat for this time. I don't want to go without eating for 40 days. How about you?
Heck no.
But Endubsar's only going to have one piece of bread and one drink of water. But he is told that will sustain him for this time. So Endubsar ate the bread and drank the water, and then he was directed to a table.
And on the table he saw the stylus and tablets that had a hue as blue and as pure as the sky. He had never seen anything like this before.
Well, it's funny. I have a tablet sitting right here in front of me, and it has a hue as blue and as pure as the sky. I don't have a stylus, though.
It sounds very familiar.
Very familiar. And he is told that these are the tools that he will use to transcribe the words of Enki. The faces of these tablets were made of lapis lazuli and were smooth as glass, just like mine.
Mm-hmm.
And the stylus is a god's handwork made of electrum with a tip made of divine crystal. And the stylus fit perfectly in his hand, and writing on the tablet would be as easy as marking upon wet clay.
And Endubsar was given direct instructions on how to write the words of Enki, and not to deviate from his words and utterances. And as Enki began to speak, Endubsar began to write. And after 40 days and 40 nights, Enki told Endubsar that his task was completed, and to take another tablet to write down his own testimony. And at the end, as a witness, mark it with his own seal and place it with the other tablets in a chest. For at a designated time, chosen ones shall find the chest and will be able to learn everything he had been instructed to record.
Enki told Endubsar these were to be known as the words of the Lord Enki, and shall be a book of witnessing of the past, and a book foretelling the future. For the future in the past lies, and the first things shall also be the last things. And after he wrote his own words, Endubsar placed the tablets in a chest of acacia wood lined with gold.
And Enki told him that he was pleased with his work, and that Endubsar would be a spokesman to the people, that cities would be rebuilt, and crops will begin to sprout, that there will be peace, but also mighty wars, that new nations will become mighty, and kingdoms shall rise and fall. The olden gods shall step aside, and the new gods shall decree the fates. But at the end of days, destiny shall prevail, and the future is foretold in my words about the past.
And that after Endubsar, there would be other chosen prophets. And in the end, there will be a new earth and a new heaven. And there will no longer be a need for new prophets. Endubsar was then released and found himself in the field outside of Eridu city. And these are the words of Enki, given to us by Master Scribe Endubsar.
This is a synopsis of the first tablet. Mourning over the desolation of Sumer, how the gods fled their cities as the nuclear cloud spread, the debates in the council of the gods, the fateful decision to unleash the weapons of terror, the origin of the gods, and the awesome weapons on Nibiru, Nibiru's north-south wars, unification, and dynastic rules, Nibiru's place in our solar system, a dwindling atmosphere causes climate changes, efforts to obtain gold to shield the atmosphere fail, Alalu, a usurper, uses nuclear weapons to stir volcanic gases, a dynastic heir, deposes Alalu. Alalu steals a spacecraft and escapes from Nibiru.
So, just from this synopsis, we learn what the evil wind was. It was actually a nuclear weapon.
Right. And it appears that the first tablet is going to shed some light into the origins of the beings that came to Earth and why they came here. So now we have the first tablet. The words of the Lord Enki, firstborn son of Anu, who reigns on Nibiru.
With heavy spirit I utter laments. Laments that are bitter fill my heart.
How smitten is the land, its people delivered to the evil winds, its stables abandoned, its sheepfolds emptied.
How smitten are the cities, their people piled up as dead corpses, afflicted by the evil wind.
How smitten are the fields, their vegetation withered, touched by the evil wind.
How smitten are the rivers, nothing swims anymore, pure sparkling waters turned into poison.
Of its black-headed people, Sumer is emptied, gone is all life. On a side note, the text is calling Sumer Schumer, so we're going to use Sumer from this point forward.
Of its cattle and sheep, Sumer is emptied. Silent is the hum of churning milk.
In its glorious cities, only the wind howls. Death is the only smell.
Man, that had to be gross.
Man, yeah.
The temples whose heads to heaven arose by their gods have been abandoned.
Of lordship and kingship command, there is none. Scepter and tiara are gone.
And so we can see what's going on here. I mean, this evil wind, this nuclear blast. I mean, what the writings are telling us is basically some fled, but everything else is just complete destruction. And on the banks of the two great rivers, once lush and life growing, only weeds grow.
No one treads the highways. No one seeks out the roads. Flourishing Sumer is like an abandoned desert.
How smitten is the land, home of gods and men. On that land a calamity fell, one unknown to man, a calamity that mankind had never seen before, one that could not be withstood.
On all the lands, from west to east, a disruptive hand of terror was placed. The gods in their cities were helpless as men.
So we see that even the Anunnaki that were living on Earth were just getting completely annihilated. An evil wind, a storm born in a distant plain, a great calamity wrought in its path.
A death-dealing wind, born in the west, its way to the east has made, its course set by fate. Can you imagine this coming towards you?
It had to be a pretty scary sight, I would think. A storm devouring as the deluge. By wind and not by water, a destroyer. By poisoned air, not tidal waves, overwhelming.
By fate, not destiny, was it engendered. The great gods, in their council, the great calamity had caused.
By Enlil and Ninharsag it was permitted. I alone for a halt was beseeching.
Day and night, to accept what the heavens decree, I argued, to no avail.
And so I think what we're seeing here is the words of Enki, his own words telling that he didn't want this calamity to take place. He was arguing that this was not good.
That's right. He was in complete opposition to it.
So Ninurta, Enlil's warrior son, and Nergal, my very own son, Enki's own son, poisoned weapons in the great plain, then unleashed.
That an evil wind shall follow the brilliance we knew not. They now cry in agony.
So maybe they're thinking this idea to destroy the humans with nuclear weapons wasn't such a great idea now.
Yeah, now they're really upset about it.
That the death-dealing storm, born in the west, its course to the east shall make. Who could foretell? The gods now bemoan.
In their holy cities, the gods stood, disbelieving as the evil wind toward Sumer made its way.
One after another, the gods fled their cities, their temples abandoned to the wind.
In my city, Eridu, as the poison cloud approached, I could do nothing to stop it.
Escape to the open steppe. To the people I gave instructions. With Ninki, my spouse, the city I abandoned.
In his city, Nibiru, place of the bond heaven earth, Enlil could do nothing to stop it.
The evil wind against Nippur was onrushing. In his celestial boat, Enlil and his spouse hurriedly took off.
In Sumer's city of kingship, Nanar, to his father Enlil, for help cried. In the place of the temple that rose to the heaven, in the 7 steps rises, Nanar, the hand of fate, refused to heed.
My father who begot me, great God, who to had granted kingship, turn the evil wind away, Nanar pleaded.
Great God who decrees the fates, let and his people be spared. Your praises to continue, Nanar appealed.
Enlil answered his son Nanar, noble son, your wondrous city kingship was granted. Eternal reign, it was not granted. So he's telling his son, dude, you're screwed. It's over, bro.
Yeah. Just accept it. Take hold of your spouse, Ningal. Flee the city. Even I who decree fates. Its destiny I cannot bend.
Thus did Enlil, my brother, speak. Alas, alas. Not a destiny it was.
A calamity none greater since than the deluge gods and earthlings had befallen. Alas, not a destiny it was.
The great deluge was destined to happen. The great calamity of the death-dealing storm was not.
By the breach of a vow, by a council decision it was caused, by weapons of terror was it created.
By a decision, not destiny, were the poison weapons unleashed. By deliberation was the lot cast.
Against Marduk, my firstborn, did the two sons destruction direct. Vengeance was in their hearts.
Ascendancy is not Marduk's to grasp. Enlil's firstborn shouted. With weapons I shall oppose him, Ninurta said.
Of people he raised an army, Babili as earth's Nabal to declare. Nergal, Marduk's brother, so shouted.
In the council of the great gods, words of venom were spread.
Day and night I have raised my opposing voice. Peace I counseled, deploring haste.
For the second time the people have raised his heavenly image. Why does opposing continue? I asked, pleading.
Have all the instruments been checked? Did not the era of Marduk in the heavens arrive? I once more inquired.
Ningishzida, my very son, other signs of heaven sighted. His heart, I knew, Marduk's injustice to him could not forgive.
Nanar to Enlil, on earth born, was unrelenting too. Marduk, my temple in the north city, his own abode made. So he said.
Ishkur, Enlil's youngest, punishment demanded. In my lands to whore after him the people he made, he said.
Utu, son of Nanar, at Marduk's son Nabu, his wrath directed. The palace of the celestial chariots he tried to seize.
Inanna, twin of Utu, was furious of all. The punishment of Marduk for the killing of her beloved Dumuzi she still demanded.
Ninharsag, mother of gods and men, her gaze diverted. Why is not Marduk here? She only said.
Gibel, my own son, with gloom replied. Marduk has all entries put aside. By the signs of heaven, his supremacy he claims.
Only with weapons will Marduk be stopped. Ninurta, Enlil's firstborn, shouted.
Utu, about protecting the palace of the celestial chariots, was concerned. In Marduk's hands it must not fall, so he said.
Nerfal, lord of the lower domain, ferociously was demanding, let the olden weapons of terror for obliteration be used.
For brother against brother, the terror weapons have been forsworn.
Instead of consent, there was silence. In the silence, Enlil opened his mouth. Punishment there must be. Like birds without wings, the evildoers shall be.
Marduk and Nabu, us of heritage, are depriving. Let them of the palace, of the celestial chariots, be deprived.
Let the place be scorched to oblivion, Ninurta shouted. The one who scorches, let me be.
Excited, Nergal stood up and shouted, let the evildoers' cities also be upheavaled. The sinning cities, let me obliterate. Let the annihilator my name thereafter be.
The earthlings, by us created, must not be harmed. The righteous with the sinners must not be perished, I forcefully said.
Ninharsag, my creating helpmate, was consenting. The matter is between the gods alone to settle. The people must not be harmed.
Anew, from the celestial abode, to the discussions was given much heed.
Anu, who determines fates, from his
Can the next 90 seconds change your life? I'm going to show you a 3-step method used by millionaires, Fortune 500 executives, and everyday people who have generated more success than you can possibly imagine. They followed this 3-step elevated success method to fulfill their untapped potential, to accelerate their careers, and improve their overall life satisfaction and happiness. And manifest the life beyond their wildest dreams. Visit us at the Jericho Experiment and I'll show you how you can get started today.
Celestial abode, his voice made heard. Let the weapons of terror be this once used. Let the place of the rocket ships be obliterated. Let the people be spared.
Let Ninurta, the Scorcher, be. Let Nergal be the Annihilator. So did Enlil the decision announce.
To them, a secret of the gods I shall reveal. The hiding place of the terror weapons to them I shall disclose.
The two sons, one mine, one his, to his inner chamber Enlil summoned. Nergal, as he went by me, his gaze averted.
Uh-oh. Won't even make eye contact at this point. So, a lot's going on here, huh?
Yeah, I'd say so.
A lot of confusion, mass destruction. Alas, I cried out with words. Brother has turned against brother. Are the prior times fated to repeat?
A secret from the olden times to them Enlil was revealing. The weapons of terror to their hands entrusting.
Clad with terror, with a brilliance they are unleashed. All they touch, to a dust heap they turn.
For brother against brother on earth they were forsworn, neither region to effect.
Now, the oath was undone, like a broken jar in useless pieces.
The two sons, full of glee, with quickened step from Enlil's chamber emerged, for the weapons departing.
The other gods turned back to their cities. None of his own calamity had a foreboding.
Now, this is the account of the prior times, and of the weapons of terror. Before the prior times was the beginning. After the prior times were the olden times. In the olden times, the gods came to earth and created the earthlings. In the prior times, none of the gods was on the earth, nor were the earthlings yet fashioned. In the prior times, the abode of the gods was on their own planet. Nibiru is its name, a great planet, reddish in radiance. Around the sun, an elongated circuit Nibiru makes. For a time in the cold is Nibiru engulfed. For part of its circuit by the sun strongly is it heated. A thick atmosphere Nibiru envelops by volcanic eruptions constantly fed. All manner of life this atmosphere sustains. Without it, there will be only perishing. In the cold period, the inner heat of Nibiru it keeps about the planet, like a warm coat that is constantly renewed. In the hot period, it shields Nibiru from the sun's scorching rays. In the midst rains, it holds and releases to lakes and streams, giving rise. Lush vegetation, our atmosphere feeds and protects. All manner of life in the waters and on the land to sprout it caused.
After eons of time, our own species sprouted, by our own essence and eternal seed to procreate. As our numbers grew, to many regions of Nibiru our ancestors spread. Some tilled the land, some four-legged creatures shepherded, some lived on the mountains, some in the valleys, their home made. Rivalries occurred, encroachments happened, clashes occurred, sticks became weapons. Clans gathered into tribes. Then two great nations each other faced. The nation of the north against the nation of the south took up arms. What was held by hand to thrusting missiles was turned. Weapons of thunder and brilliance increased the terror. A war, long and fierce, engulfed the planet. Brother amassed against brother. There was death and destruction, both north and south. For many circuits desolation reigned the land. All life was diminished. Then a truce was declared. Then peacemaking was conducted. Let the nations be united, the emissaries said to one another. Let there be one throne on Nibiru, one king to reign over all. Let a leader from north or from south by lot be chosen, one king supreme to be. If he be from north, let south choose a female to be his spouse, as equal queen to reign alongside. If by lot a south male be chosen, let the north's female be his spouse. Husband and wife let them be, as one flesh to become. Let their firstborn son be the successor. Let a unified dynasty thus be formed, unity on Nibiru forever to establish.
In the midst of the ruins, peace was started. North and South by marriage were united. The royal throne into one flesh combined, and an unbroken line of kingship established. The first king after peace was made, a warrior of the north he was, a mighty commander. By lots, true and fair, he was chosen. His decrees and unity were accepted. For his abode he built a splendid city, Agade, unity meaning was its name. For his reign a royal title was granted. On it was. The celestial one was its meaning.
With strong arm order in the lands he reestablished. Laws and regulations he decreed.
Governors for each land he appointed. Restoration and reclamation was their foremost task.
Of him in the royal annals, thus it was recorded. On, the lands unified. Peace on Nibiru restored.
He built a new city. The canals he repaired. Food to the people he provided. There was an abundance in the lands.
For his spouse, the south, a maiden had chosen. For both love and warring she was noted.
Antu was her royal title. The leader who is On's spouse. The given name cleverly did mean.
She bore On 3 sons and no daughters. The firstborn son was by her named Enki. By On, a solid foundation was its meaning.
Alone on the throne he was seated. A spouse to choose was twice postponed.
In his reign, concubines were brought into the palace. A son to him was not born.
The dynasty, thus begun, was by the death of Enki disrupted. On the foundation of no offspring followed.
The middle son, though not the firstborn, the legal heir was pronounced.
From his youth, one of 3 brothers, Ib, by his mother, was lovingly called. The one in the middle his name did mean.
By the royal annals, on Ib he is named. In kingship celestial, by generations, the one who is On's son, the name signified.
He followed his father on Nibiru's throne. By count, he was the 3rd to reign.
The daughter of his younger brother he chose to be his spouse. Nin-Ib she was called, the Lady of Ib.
A son to Anib by Ninib was born. The successor on the throne he was, the 4th by the count of the kings.
By the royal name On-Shargal she wished himself to be known. On's prince, who is greatest of princes, was the meaning.
His spouse, a half-sister, Kishargal, was equally named.
Knowledge and understanding were his chief ambition. The ways of the heavens he assiduously studied.
The great circuit of Nibiru he studied. Its length, a shar to be, he fixed.
As 1 year of Nibiru was the measure, by it the royal reigns to be numbered and recorded.
The shar to 10 portions he divided. 2 festivals thereby he pronounced.
When nearest to the sun's quarters, a festival of the warmth was celebrated.
When to its far abode Nibiru was distanced, the festival of coolness was decreed.
Replacing all olden festivals of tribes and nations, to unify the people, the 2 were established.
laws of husband and wife, of sons and daughters, by decree he established.
Customs from the first tribes he proclaimed for the whole land.
From the wars, females greatly outnumbered males.
Decrees he made, one male to have more than one female for knowing.
By law, one wife as official spouse to be chosen, first wife to be called.
By law, the firstborn son was his father's successor.
By these laws, confusion soon came about. If the firstborn son not by the first wife was born, and thereafter by the first wife a son was born, by law the legal heir becoming.
Who shall be the successor? The one by the count of Shar's firstborn? The one by the first wife born?
The firstborn son, the legal heir, who shall inherit? Who shall succeed?
In the reign of Anshargal, Ki-Shargal as first wife pronounced.
A half-sister of the king she was.
In Anshargal's reign, concubines were again brought into the palace.
By the concubines, sons and daughters to the king were born.
A son by one was the first to be born. The son of a concubine was the firstborn.
Thereafter, Ki-Shargal bore a son. The legal heir, by law he was. The firstborn he was not.
In the palace, Ki-Shargal raised her voice, in anger shouting,
If by rules my son, by a first wife born, from succession shall be barred.
Let the double seed not be neglected.
Though of different mothers, of one father the king and I are offspring.
I am the king's half-sister. Of me, the king is half-brother.
By that my son, the double seed of our father Anib, possesses.
Let henceforth the law of the seed, the law of espousal, overpower.
Let henceforth a son by a half-sister, whenever born, above all other sons rise to succession.
Anshargal contemplating. The law of the seed embraced with favor.
Confusion of spouse and concubines, of marriage and divorce, by it would be avoided.
In their council, the royal counselors, the law of the seed for succession adopted.
By the king's order, the scribes, the decree recorded.
Thus, the next king, by the law of the seed for succession, was proclaimed.
To him the royal name Anshar was granted. Fifth on the throne he was. And we're going to stop reading right here. So let's talk about what we just learned. We know that there was a great war on Earth, and Enki opposed the whole thing.
Yeah, and it seems like Enki's brother Enlil was completely in favor of this war. Maybe it was even his idea in the first place. But it appears that Enlil's focus was to completely rid the Earth of us humans.
Wow, man, I really like this guy Enlil. I'm just kidding, obviously. But those that were in favor of using these weapons of terror had no idea just how powerful they actually were.
They did not.
We can see that even members of the Anunnaki were being destroyed in this war.
Yeah, and that obviously wasn't the plan. But once this evil wind started, it just couldn't be stopped. And you and I, we've heard about the ancient Sumerians and how there's really no record of what happened to them.
Well, so maybe we just read what happened to them.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what it seems like, right?
It does.
So, we just read the first part of the first tablet. It's a pretty long tablet. I'm surprised he got it all written down in 40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah, really.
But the first tablet, it takes us to the prior times.
And things on Nibiru seem to be just as chaotic as they were on Earth during the Anunnaki made war.
Yeah. And we learned about the wars between the North and the South and how the killings, it left more females than males.
That's not a bad thing.
But then the Anunnaki decided to stop fighting, and they tried to figure out a way to bring peace and, have it all under one ruler.
And, the first king was On from the north, and appointed one king to rule over the planets, brought on a lot of rules.
Yeah. The first was that since he was from the north, he had to take a spouse from the south. Which this sounds like it would have been a good thought, to try to unify the entire planet,
Yeah, it seems logical. I mean, the same things were done here on Earth in the attempt to unify countries.
Yeah.
But when they start creating their laws of succession, things start to get really confusing.
Right. So it starts to sound a lot like the Game of Thrones.
It does.
Wars, rivalries, incest,
Yeah.
and the unifying of kingdoms through marriage.
And we haven't even made it through the first tablet yet. So join us next time as we finish up the first tablet in the Lost Book of Enki, Memoirs and Prophecies of an Extraterrestrial God. Until next time, keep tearing down those walls. Visit us at jerichoexperiment.com. Go ahead and click that subscribe button and like us. Click the bell so you're notified. And we'll see you next time.